Chapter 13 Royal Guests. After Easter, the whole universe changed, or so it seemed to Hugh. The dreamy quietness, the sense of closeness of the world of the spirit, which had so pervaded the very air of the monastery, especially through the happenings of Holy Week, vanished suddenly and completely, and material matters became important again. It began when a richly caparisoned horse and messenger came clattering up to the main gate, and announced that King Henry, his queen, and his court were even then upon their way to Glaston, and would spend 2 days as guests of the abbot. His Majesty wished at that time to witness and take part in the shrining of the bones of King Arthur and Queen Guinevere, and to discuss many and sundry matters concerning the abbot with Father Robert. The whole place was at once thrown into a state of preparation and confusion. It was like King Henry to give them so little warning. People who knew his ways said he frequently went to bed giving no hint of any intention of moving elsewhere, and then, in the early dawn, would suddenly issue orders for his court and servitors to wake up and prepare instantly to move to another spot, even to another country. Hugh remembered more than one occasion when his father had left home with barely an hour's notice, because the king had suddenly taken a notion to go off somewhere, north, east, south, or west, and desired Sir Hugh de Morville to accompany him. The boy smiled rather grimly when Dickon fell upon him, all excitement and anticipation at the news that the king and his court would be riding into the grounds of Glastonbury within 2 short days. "It will be like a plague of locusts," said he. "They came to our house once, our castle of Knaresborough, such a stir about and hullabaloo, such a clatter and fuss, and then when they were gone, there was nothing left, nothing in the larders, nothing in the wine cellars, nothing, literally, that wasn't too heavy to carry off. What we had not given away was just taken by the king's servants and hangers-on. I can't see why anybody would get so excited about His Majesty, Henry II. Dickon looked thoughtful for a moment. "Why, he's the king! That's why it's so exciting. He isn't just a man. He stands for things, knighthood and deeds of honour and courage, and just everything adventurous." Hugh grunted, but made no further comment. At the moment, he had more sympathy with Brother John, who was restless and irritable because his orderly routine was all upset by the confusion in the kitchen. His special corner where he stretched his parchment skins and mixed his dyes and boiled his herbs and roots and made his glue was swept over by cooks and stewards who paid no more attention to him and his work than if he had been a fly. After being scolded by pastry cooks, dripped on by syrup makers, and bumped into wherever he went, he gave it up and retired to the cloisters, where he walked up and down, as uneasy as a duck out of water. The guest-house must be got in order for the most unusual presence of ladies. The wine cellars must be inspected carefully and replenished where necessary. Tons of meat, fowl, game, and fish must be got in, and as much pastry as could be cooked beforehand must be prepared and set aside for the great days. At last they came, outstriders and heralds first, in gay clothing, with plumed caps, waving pennons, and sounding trumpets. The knights, with the king and queen in their midst, their helmets shining in the sun, their chain armour glinting, their horses splendid in trappings of blues and greens, reds and yellows, with bridles jangling as they tossed their spirited heads. Queen Eleanor rode beside her lord on a snow-white palfrey. She sat tall and easily on her red Spanish leather saddle, looking older than the king, and much more regal and commanding, her scarlet fur-edged cloak falling gracefully about her shoulders. Her hands gloved in jewelled gauntlets, which rested with firm grace on the slender bridle. Behind this noble company rode damsels and ladies-in-waiting, and many pages and squires, and lesser knights, and then servants a long retinue. Hugh and Dickon stood with a crowd of monastery folk and villagers just inside the gate, and watched them ride by. Everybody doffed his cap, and gave a little ducking bow as the king and queen passed. Dickon's sharp eyes missed nothing, the strong, stocky build of the king, his thick neck, wide shoulders, and the vigour with which he rode his powerful steed. the pride in the queen's beautiful face, the long hair braided with strands of scarlet ribbon, the fillet of gold that held her white coif in place, and the smile which was both condescending and coldly gracious as she looked over the crowds gathered on both sides of the road to watch her pass. He noted the curled locks of pages, the rich brocaded and fur-trimmed tunics and cloaks of squires and courtiers, and all the dazzle, pomp, and splendor of the whole cavalcade. "That is Maurice, the king's minstrel," whispered Hugh, nudging his companion as an especially gaily apparelled gentleman rode by, with a page close at his heels, bearing a lute and a leather book satchel. "And there goes Walter Mape, the archdeacon, the one in scarlet cloak and black cap. He is a great friend of the king's, and he writes clever verses and chronicles and stories too, so they say." "That page boy looks too proud to notice his own belly-button," commented Dickon, rather vulgarly, as a curled and gorgeous youth rode by, his nose in the air. "And there are some girls, quite little girls. That one on the dappled pony with the long brown hair looks younger than we are. Looks saucy, too. Know who she is?" "No," said Hugh, following the others unabashed and pointing fingers. "Must be one of the Queen's wards. Why, she's got a dog under her arm. A little white dog. See him?" They were all in through the gates at last, and such a chattering and laughing, such a stamping and neighing of horses, such issuing of orders, and such bowings and courtly greetings. Hugh and Dickon promptly got themselves into the middle of it all. The abbot was there at the king's bridle, and his majesty dismounted and kissed him on either cheek, a formality permitted only to the great. A courtier in a blue and white tunic, fur-edged, was assisting the queen to dismount, and now Father Abbot approached her, and she bent gracefully to receive his blessing and kiss his hand. Lay brothers were leading horses toward the stables, and squires followed with their masters' mounts. Brother Arnulf, his cowl bobbing on his shoulders and his black habit winding itself about his ankles, ran hither and yon, bowing a greeting here, issuing directions there, apportioning this group to the guest-house, that to the abbot's quarters, and the servants and retainers to a little used dormitory over the infirmary. It was all delightful, colourful, and exciting. Hugh helped the guest-master in telling folk where to go. Dickon hung about the horses, fascinated by the splendid steeds, the bright trappings, and gay saddle leather. He also managed to keep within sight of the young damsel with the dog, and when, in the confusion and crowd of dismounting and being greeted, the small beast slipped from the mistress's arms and ran off, barking and yapping, it was Dickon who recovered him and bore him back to his owner. The little lady's blue eyes were large with tears when Dickon bashfully approached her, but she broke into a radiant smile at sight of her pet. "Oh, thank you," she exclaimed. "Thank you 1,000 times. My Kenny must have been so frightened. He might have got away entirely if you had not caught him, and then my heart would be so broken, I verily believe." Dickon, finding nothing to say, stood awkwardly on one foot, then on the other. Luckily at this moment Hugh came upon them. "Greeting, fair lady," said he with a sweeping courtly bow, "and welcome to our Glaston." The girl smiled and curtsied in return. Dickon, suddenly realizing that his manners lacked something in the way of knightly courtesy, snatched off his round cap and imitated Hugh's bow, albeit he was ill at ease in the process. Then the three stood looking at each other, unable to get started in conversation. It was Hugh who saved the situation by saying with courteous formality, "It is a great honour to us of Glaston to receive Her Majesty Queen Eleanor and all her fair ladies, of whom you are surely the fairest." Not for nothing had Hugh been instructed in troubadour ways and manners of speech. The young lady, thus addressed, coloured, and then giggled. "Faith," she said, "I be not so fine as all that. I be just Eileen, ward to the Queen. I come from a castle in the north, and am sent by my lady, Queen Eleanor, to be nurtured and taught manners." Suddenly her blue eyes clouded, and the tears started. "I be mortal tired of being stiff and proper all day long, and sore homesick. If it were not for Kenny, that I brought with me from home, I think I should die." All the courtly, artificial manner slipped out of Hugh like starch from wet linen. "I know what it feels like to be homesick," said he in quick sympathy. And I'm so glad I found Kenny for you, Dickon added heartily. If you lose him again, just tell someone to find Dickon, the oblate, and I'll get him for you, if it's the last thing I do in this world. So you're Dickon, and I'm Eileen, and you? Hugh, said the other. Then, after a moment's hesitation, he added, Hugh de Morville, you. You probably know my father? The girl shook her head. She was smiling again now, a wide, friendly smile that showed her even, white young teeth, and brought a dimple into one cheek. No, but I don't know many people yet, even by reputation. I'm new at court, you see. At that moment a large scolding woman bore down upon them and whisked the Lady Eileen away. Watch for me after dinner, said she over her shoulder. If I can, I will talk to you. Goodbye, Dickon, and Hugh. See, Kenny is waving to you. She waggled the dog's paw in their direction, and then hurried on, in the train of the large woman, toward the guest-house. The two boys watched her out of sight. By the bones of St. Crispin, declared Dickon emphatically, if I were a knight, I should not rest until yon damsel were my lady. One does not realize, mewed up in a monastery as you and I are, that ladies are good to look at, and to be with, does one? One does not, agreed Hugh, and one forgets. I thought my sisters were silly, with their troubadours, making big eyes at them, and always laughing and giggling and fiddling with their hair. But the Lady Eileen— He left his sentence unfinished. Let's show her around the place, suggested Dickon. We might even take her down to the treasure vault, and let her see the sapphire altar. Hugh shook his head dubiously. She would not be permitted to go, and besides, she would probably be afraid. Girls are not very brave, you know. I guess Eileen would be, Dickon defended loyally. Well, come on, let's see what else is new and exciting. The shrining begins well.